and welcome to Abuja. Let me just look at my watch. Am I playing games? How many minutes behind schedule? I crave your understanding. My name is Mwabose Njoko, and you are welcome to a very special edition of Signature Morning this Thursday. I'm sure you enjoy the more than 2 hours interaction from our Enugu studio. This is Abuja. I'm going straight to the issues. This is the second anniversary of the Tinubu administration. And we're going to look at how far, how well. Look at our topic this morning, 2 years of Tinubu administration. How healthy is Nigeria's democracy? And I have people, perfect guests, who know to again this morning to educate me. We've been running for a stretch marathon of 2 hours. First, from my left, is a friend, a comrade, a thorough academic whom I've been missing for quite a long time, Professor Mukhtar Imam. Professor Imam is a political science professor at the Institute of Security Studies. Prof, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Where have you been?
I've been around.
You've been around?
Yes.
Okay. At least I succeeded in pulling you out today.
And I am honored that you consider me a friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof. And also with us here is a healed lawyer, former vice president, immediate in fact, past vice president of Nigerian Bar Association, Clement Ugo Chukwuemeka. Clement, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Did you bring me clement weather again today?
The weather is always clement.
When you are here with me.
Whenever I'm here. Yeah.
Thank you very much. How healthy is Nigerian democracy after 2 years of Tinubu? But let me start this way. I'm thoroughly not qualified to define certain things. But I'm going to begin because we said how healthy is our democracy. Prof, just before we came on air,
Right.
I told you that I was wondering the standard definition of democracy.
Right.
Government of the people, for the people, by the people. Does that define the process of bringing the people in? In other words, I'm wondering if I am a Nigerian coup plotter, I'm a Nigerian coup plotter, and I am acting in the interest of the people, and the people have endorsed me because I'm delivering on their expectations. Will that qualify our democracy?
Once again, thank you very much.
Thank Prof.
You see, the start to place this within a proper context for educating our audience and to have a proper grasp of the situation. It is quite pivotal that we situate the conversation within specific context. And I'm going to start by looking at what you have just said, or unpacking what you have just said within the context of etymology, i.e. that we're going to be dissecting and x-raying the conversation around democracy from the etymological viewpoint. We're going to be looking at it from the conceptual viewpoint as political scientists. And of course, we're going to land with the philosophical understanding of democracy. Democracy, as we all know, as we may know, took its root from the ancient Greek city societies as a result of the efforts of Socrates and Plato, etc., by trying to compare the over 120 Greek city constitutions. And they stumble on what we have today, or what they had at the time as democracy. Democracies, of course, popular rule or people rule, depending on the interpreter. That was the basis, if you like, of what we now witness as Western democracy. Of course, democracy had its variants long before Plato and Aristotle in other climes of the world, from Africa to the Middle East and into the Far East. But it wasn't dubbed democracy. Because when you look at the governmental system, for example, in the over 1,400 years of the existence of a man called Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, who is revered by the Muslim as a prophet, you would see that there was a semblance of democracy in what transpired in the old Arabian Peninsula, the land of Bakka, which is what is today referred to as Makkah, but we don't have to go into all of that. You come into Africa, you will come to realize that there was a semblance of democracy prior to the colonial incursion. And this is a position that has been accepted by even Western pundits. Democracy essentially has certain very pertinent elements. One of them is separation of power. The other is devolution of power. And the third, perhaps, would be alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. And when you look at the structure of the African society prior to the colonial incursion, the reality is that elements of these
were in operation.
So it means we had some form of variant of democracy even before the Western liberal democracy began to rear its head around here, which is essentially what colonialism drove into our societies and pushed down our throats, line, hook, and sinker. Now, this is the etymological understanding of the idea of democracy and where it has evolved from. As a concept, of course, democracy has been viewed, it has metamorphosed over the years. And the trajectory it has taken over these years has caused it to take various forms, dimensions, and variants. And today, you find that even the Chinese will tell you what we have is a democracy. And of course, they have tagged it socialism with some element of democracy. And that is what we now know today in the text as democratic socialism. Beyond that is what you have alluded to, which is the philosophical conceptualization of democracy. So you find that democracy has its scientific definition drawn from its etymology, which defines democracy, which is what has come to be adopted, even though in the social sciences, concepts defy definition. However, there are standards, there are universal acceptable, connotations of certain concepts. And so what the world has come to adopt scientifically as democracy is a system of government whereby individuals are elected and in some cases selected through the whims and caprices of the citizenry, which is reflective of the etymological definition of democratias, which is people rule or popular rule. So conceptually, this is what democracy is about. A system of government whereby people elect or select those who represent them in positions of authority is what democracy is about. So wherever you find that these forms are present or prevalent, you have a democracy. And then, of course, you begin to talk about its attributes and tenets. You begin to mention freedom of speech, etc., etc. And then the most critical, which is the lifeline of a democracy, is to ensure that these critical organs that watch one another are present. And of course, you have periodic election, functional. So this is what you have. But speaking to the philosophical definition or conceptualization of democracy, which is government of the people, for the people, and by the people, which was a coinage from Abraham Lincoln's popular prism, you will come to see that that could open room for a lot of contestation.
Like what I just raised.
However, you see, the people here
are not the coup plotters. Thank you very much.
Thank you for arriving for me.
Clement, well, as a lawyer, does my philosophical venture make any meaning when you are considering democracy? Does it make any meaning, or am I just venturing into shark-infested waters?
Definitely, I think you have just hit it by the head of the nail, because you said you're already in a shark invested water. Some of us who are Democrats by nature believes that the government that should be practiced in every civilized climb must be a government that is centered by the people, that are people oriented, not decisions that can be taken within one or two persons and handed down to billions of people.
No matter how beneficial
and no matter how.
it is.
So, and I must appreciate Prof in dissecting that etymological point and philosophical area, which you are actually arguing that whether the military or whoever that is in power are not part of the people. They are part of the people, but they have their boundaries, and they have a modus operandi.
And they are an institution that has its functions.
They have their functions, and definitely a lot of people who have not witnessed their rule, definitely, because majority of the persons, I think Nigeria is over 30-something years when we last witnessed that. A lot of the young ones that are now, that's why you see some of the countries that the military have taken over, they keep celebrating and celebrating. That is not what we wish for everybody, but we cannot, as a matter of fact, waive their own importance in the economic development of every nation. We mustn't waive it just like that. And I have Abuja as a very great example. I don't think that there is any civilian government who have done what the military did in terms of development.
Thank you very much. That does not qualify them. You know why, Prof? Why I started from this venturesome background,
right,
is because there is an uncomfortable conversation within the media space, within the social media space. I say, oh, these times are very hard. This governance is very expensive and profligate. These processes are taking a century for the outcome to be experienced and all that. I think there should be a shortcut to all this nonsense. Now, I'm using it for us to make an entry into the reaction of the citizenry to what they are getting out of governance at present. Do you think that in the past 2 years, this government has given the Nigerian citizen a reason to be confident, trusting, hopeful in Nigerian democracy?
You see, let me start by endorsing and, of course, building upon this conversation from what yourself and Barrister have just alluded to. And of course, you could tell when Barrister was speaking to the last point that the one thing that is most essential to people or the citizenry is dividends of government, is to ensure that food is on their table. People do not care what name you give to the system of government. All they are concerned about is its impact. Why? Because that is what the social contract dictates.
That's what it's all about.
So where people begin to find that their needs are not met, they will question the authority. You begin to see traits that you might assume are, anti-democratic. Now, to answer your question, you see, the reality is there's a deficit in governance, which has created a deficit in development, which has in turn created a deficit in
trust and confidence.
Right. Now, where you find that a system is rift with trust deficit, it is only natural that the people revolt against such a system, no matter how good it appears on paper. People will naturally galvanize themselves and say, we're tired. Because humans have two essential traits. We're either submissive or we're aggressive. If a man cannot provide milk and bread for his family, he's wilder than the beast. Every system of government has its flaws as much as they have their benefits. Every system. And that's why you would take, not with a pinch of salt, the last passage or the last point that Barrister was trying to allude to, that there is no civilian government that can match infrastructural development and economic contributions that the military have made using Abuja as a case study. The National Human Rights Commission was established by whom? Sani Abacha. So when you go down that path, you will come to see that there are a lot of indices that are available for you to be able to use to juxtapose your position, which is the foundation you were trying to lay ab initio. So you see, people do not really concern themselves with the names
and the processes.
Exactly. What people are mostly, the fundamental is to ensure that the dividends of democracy,
the outcome,
absolutely, it is the outcome of the outcome that people are concerned about. And like I said, this is what the social contract theory or the social contract agrees with. And so therefore, you find that all over the world, this is not just a Nigerian factor, there's a democratic reversal going on all over the world today. Tell me, point to one place. You will barely find a place where elections have been conducted and concluded in the last decade where you do not see protests, including the United States. So there is that, the deep-seated contestation with regards to outcomes of whatever processes that has brought people to positions of authority. And perhaps this is the reason why even people like Socrates themselves have said that democracy is one of the worst forms of government. And when he was asked why, he said because it puts in position of authority people who have no business with governance. Because, lo and behold, democracy is about populism.
That's what
it is. It is not about effectiveness or efficiency. But the United Nations will differ because they have sanctioned and counter-sanctioned Muammar Gaddafi, who tried to bring succor to his people.
I was there. I saw it all, and I was sad the day he died.
So you see, when you take all of these independent issues and you put them collectively to try to dissect and analyze, it leaves you with a very bleak conclusion or submission. And it is of no fault of yours. It is as a result of the frustration and hopelessness that you see within the system. These are some of the things that leads certain individuals and certain groups
to begin to raise some conversations
around these issues.
Querying democracy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, while there are deep-seated issues, we must, of course, come to also appreciate some of the benefits of democracy as well.
Okay, Prof. My third guest, Honorable Akala, he is in Kefi, and Honorable Akala will be joining us almost immediately. If my producer is put him on Zoom, Honorable Akala will shortly get across to you so that he join us in this conversation via Zoom. Now, we've just spoken generally, Barrister. Let us begin to look at 2 years of Tinubu. Has democracy, how healthy is Nigeria democracy? And Prof said the final thing, no matter the process, is the outcome. What does the Nigerian citizen feel? How does he feel about the last 2 years of the Tinubu administration? Before I take you, the first institution I'm going to take you to is the legislature. But before I do that, let me just ask my producer, are you ready with that vox pop? Because Abuja residents aired their opinion, expressed themselves on what they think about the last 2 years. Let us not speak for them. And by the way, along the line in this conversation, we'll throw the phone lines open so that you can ask questions to Prof and seek explanations from our lawyer in the studio. But first of all, if that vox pop is ready, can my producer kindly let us hear out what Abuja residents are saying?
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu clocked 2 years on May 29, 2025. The president has promised Renew Hope agenda for Nigerians, and he said every Nigerian will enjoy the dividends of democracy. 2 years after today, we are on the streets of Abuja to ask Nigerians how has the president's policies affected their lives.
As a politician, to him, maybe he must be thinking he has done enough, but at least to a common man in the country, the economy is not really palatable at all. People are suffering. There's hardship in the land. So I don't think he has done enough to a common man as it is, because the language the common man understands is at least feeding, and which has become so hard to so many people. Nigerians today are not really smiling, and we all know it has never been like this before. Despite the fact that we are still undergoing some process according to them, but I think they should do better to make life easier for a common man in the country.
As he's giving us hope, we hope to see how things are going to get better. But it's about better. If it's about better now, we're not seeing anything yet. In the next 2 years, if we see good thing, we hope we'll just be looking at it. He's doing it to just come back. Because what we expect, we are supposed to be seeing it now, not next year. If it's about next year and then 2027, he's just doing all those ones to ease things down and then come back to the power.
I see him doing things that in the nearest future we would be like, wow. So this particular ideology and knowledge was imbibed or imputed in him. But due to the kind of, will I say, cabinet members and people he has around him, they've been able to subject and subdue that growth mindset in him.
The president came into office with a lot of promises, rich videos and everything. All the old promises are still online. But he should look into things. So many people are going through a lot of things. We expect Mr. President to at least cushion the effect of what we are going through in this country by using, or let's say, the distractions around him are very large. So I believe at some point that he might not even know what we are going through.
I think there is something significant that happened in this administration that I don't know many people know. That's never been announced in the last few years. I think that is significant.
We believe if he's given a chance for the rest 2 years, it will still improve on what he has been doing. And if he extends more than that, we know then he will try.
He needs to do something, just as he promised by his campaign. He needs to put those promise in order. Otherwise, we didn't see anything of.
I think before Nigeria will become the Nigeria we all dream of, we have to pass through hard times. And I believe that is the time we are right now. And the president is trying to make things better for everybody. But because of what has happened before, that is the past government, the foundation they laid. So with the citizens of Nigeria, we are looking at it as if the president is not trying enough. But when you look at it on the other way around, the president is really trying. For him to achieve these results, we must pass through hard time. And I believe that is the time we are now. But if we can endure, things will be better.
Oga, he has not done enough to fulfill the promises of the campaign. If I may give him a pass mark, it's just 30% out of 100.
That is the opinion of Nigerians. From the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Nasiru Usman, reporting for Signature TV.
Well, I didn't say those things. Abuja residents whom we spoke with, those are the things they think about the last 2 years of the Tinubu administration. But you see, that was a mixed bag, really. Some people are not just happy, they are confident. And some others expect much more than they have got. Clement, let's look at the institutions that operate jointly to be able to deliver campaign promises and the promises of democracy. That social contract which bottom line is the welfare of the people as explained to me now by Prof. Legislature is very critical. I will take you on in this conversation on two arms of this government. As a lawyer, we'll converse elaborately on the judiciary, but a first take, legislature. Looking at the outcomes we have experienced of the Tinubu administration, how do you look at the contributions of the legislature in giving us what we've got?
Thank you very much for this wonderful question. I think, first of all, we have to look at the oath of office of every, be it the legislatures or even the political executives. In that particular oath of office, because we are meant to understand that violation of your oath of office is a crime. When we look at that oath of office, that virtually everyone who is saddled with responsibility for the governance of this country have taken, almost all of them have failed to their oaths of office. The legislature that has been saddled with responsibility of initiating quality laws for the betterment and well-being of all of us have completely, left their duties and being rubber-stamped indirectly and, hobnobbing with the executives.
Can I interject here? The president of the Nigerian Senate, distinguished Senator Godswill Akpabio, says that legislators were not elected to wear gloves and be breaking the executive jaws. That anybody who thinks that they're there to floor the president and put to pieces his appointees and his agencies and institutions, that the person is getting it wrong. That they're supposed to collaborate in order for the executive to deliver. So are we expecting hard knocks, bare knuckle punches from the legislature for us to know that they're delivering on their oath?
It is purely a political statement. If he understands, as a lawyer, he understands that there is always a check and balances in all the separation of powers. There are responsibilities that have already been enshrined in the Constitution that they must always live up to expectation by watching and guarding and looking at the functions, I think, all the responsibilities of the executive and the other area by checking to make sure that what is meant to be done is being done.
Barrister, let me again interrupt you. I hope you don't mind. My third guest, Honorable Akala, is on Zoom. Hello, Honorable Akala. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Glad to join you
this morning.
Yeah, I'm in Lafia, the Nasarawa State.
We are in Lafia, okay. That a beautiful capital city.
Yeah,
I understand that things are getting better there. This morning, we are looking at the health of Nigerian democracy. If you followed us from the beginning, we have tried to define, understand that the bottom line in democracy is what that government is giving to the electorate. In that area you are, how is Nasarawa State feeling the impact of the Tinubu administration?
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to join you from the onset of the conversation because of technical glitch. But I have a little understanding from the little I got. Like you said, democracy is about the people. Democracy has been defined by that is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Therefore, any activity of government must be one that is directed at improving the security and welfare of the citizens. And so to talk about the people of Nasarawa State feeling the impact of the Tinubu administration, first I'd like to say Nasarawa is part of Nigeria, and you hear every Nigerian say we're going through a lot. So this going through a lot transverse every length and breadth of Nigeria, including Nasarawa inclusive. Therefore, the hunger is still ravaging the streets. And of course, the difficulty in transportation, the high cost of transportation is still, of course, the people are grappling with. But you see, what I hear the people say here is that, of course, Tinubu is the president of Nigeria, he's the leader of the democracy of the country, and that he has taken very bold steps, particularly the audacity to remove the fuel subsidy that previous leaders have been very, very skeptical and scared to do. And that he did that. And that, of course, resources, more resources are at the disposal of subnational, meaning that governors and local government chairmen have more resources at their disposal at the moment. But what you always hear Nigerians say is that the president is not reaching out to the citizens. But what we hear here is that the governors too are not carrying out, they are not utilizing these funds to tackle the effect of the subsidy that has affected food prices, has affected transportation, and has, of course, affected general livelihood. So I think, to my personal opinion, that the governors may have to step up, but of course the people are not smiling. The economy has been very tough, but I must give it to the president. He has taken bold steps. If the subnational can utilize the almost about 200% increase in revenues at their disposal, and also allow the local government to utilize same, I believe that the people will feel the impact of the Tinubu administration. But right now, it has been tough. Insecurity is still there. People cannot freely go to the farm. So I think there is a lot of work to be done.
Okay, Honorable Kala, I will come back to you presently, because you have raised a fundamental issue, and Barrister Clement was trying to take us through on the contributions, or what ought to be the contributions of the legislature in the outcome of democracy, and that will help us to put the performance of the Tinubu administration in proper perspective. But Clem, Honorable Kala has raised an issue, which, pardon me, you come back to the legislature. I want you to address it. That's a mistake those of us in the media seem to be making in Nigeria, that in assessing the overall performance of the Nigerian economy, we tend to put the federal government in the limelight. Not forgetting, or rather we seem to forget, that in assessing the national economy, the performance of the subnationals is central. Now, this president has fought very furiously to set the local governments free and make money available to them directly. That is a means of putting more resources where it ought to be. This president is struggling almost effectively now to remove the local governments from the control of the governors. That also leaves some measure of operational liberty for the local governments. Lastly, he's giving so much money to them by his own financial policy. In assessing the outcome of this democracy, the deliverables, don't we also hold some nationals accountable?
In fact, the one of the only institution that is very close to the people is the local government areas. And like I said in one of the programs that we had here, that when I was when I was in primary school, I was enjoying pipe-borne water. But as it is currently in my state, we do not have pipe-borne water in my locality. And the local governments are just kind of handbags of the governors. They appoint them, either a sole administrator, or sometime in the election, they will take all positions during the election. So I think there has to be kind of a policy that will give absolute independence and core financial, to the true meaning of the financial autonomy or independence to the local government, so that they will come up and bring up their own personal ideas, and they are not under immunity, so that the Economic and Financial Crime Commissions and all the necessary agencies can hold them accountable. Because I think the president, if he has not done anything well, I think he has done tremendously well in bringing up that policy, in even thinking and cogitating about it, in bringing up to speed, even pushing the Attorney General of Federation to even go to get an interpretation to such thing. I think he has done wonderfully well, and it is left for us, because we are the people. The people will continue to agitate so that some of these policies that is already in, let's say, white paper should be implemented. And the only way it can really be implemented is by us coming up to talk about it, criticize about it, and talk a little bit true to power against the governors who have been holding this local government to ransom. It is completely everywhere. If you go to the election, the sitting governor takes all the local government areas in their states. And I wouldn't know. They only pay them normal statutory monthly stipends. But every other money, even if the local government signs that money out, the money finds its way back to the governors. So we are in a very serious problem in this country. The people that we felt that should be obeying the laws are not obeying the laws.
I'm going to come back to you, because don't forget I said we discuss elaborately legislature and the judiciary. Prof, governance, which determines the outcome of the democracy, is a joint relationship.
Yes.
The federal government at the center, the states, and the local government. Honorable Kala had just raised an issue that Nasarawa State, yes, is part of Nigeria, the people are still crying, but he said they still raise questions. Mr. Governor of Nasarawa State, Mr. Local Government of Kefi Local Government, what are you doing with the resources made available to you? If I'm to assess Tinubu now, I say, look, Tinubu has made it possible for the subnationals to receive more resources to operate. Yet the citizen is complaining that things are not going well. He's hungry, he's insecure, I'll still come to that. And we're assessing 2 years of Tinubu. Do you think the governance structure, the governance relationship is working well enough to deliver in the interest and welfare of the people? Looking at the federal, state, and local governments.
Well, the reality is that typically when you assess an administration, of course, it's a global metric. The idea is to assess the administration in the center or at the center, whether it be a federalist system or a confederalist system or even a monarchy. Or democratic monarchies as well.
The center carries the can.
The center essentially carries or bears the brunt, takes up the responsibility. Assessment is made using certain indices and parameters that falls to the center. However, it is very important that we as people begin to educate ourselves on what the federalist system is about, the responsibilities, of the subnationals, the local and of course the state governments, because by so doing, and of course the task and functions and responsibilities of the legislature, because in all fairness, sometimes we lump up the responsibilities of the executive to the legislature. Of course, as a result of ignorance or denial, you know, so or perhaps by the subtle, nuanced system that we have found ourselves in, which is induced.
Prof, do you ever listen to our legislators?
Yes.
They themselves, even when they are campaigning, begin to appropriate certain responsibilities.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It is sometimes induced by the politicians themselves, that thought process, that line of thinking. And so you find that people do not understand where to draw the line. But to answer your question very critically, the reality is that no government at the center has ever been able to do it, whether it's a federalist or confederalist state, whether it is Nigeria or the United States, without the support of the subnationals. The subnationals are an even more critical and essential element of the Nigerian project or the national project, depending on what climate we're referring to. So the roles of the subnationals are very, very critical. Where resources are made available, there's the need for them to ensure that the dividends of democracy or the dividends of the system of government reaches down to the grassroots. Because the reason why government are at various tiers is to ensure that the people feel the impact at the lowest. And so where you find that subnationals are not acting in tandem with what is happening at the center, then you have a problem. And this takes me back to the need to ensure that a framework is developed for a national objective to be achieved, and that the center is in sync with the subnationals for these policies to be achieved. Whether they be micro or macro economic policies or whatever other policies, there's the need for the government at the center and the subnationals to work in tandem. Because where you find that one is in contrast with the other, then naturally the end result is that you will find that there will be disconnect and disjoint, around. So this is literally the case. But at the end of the day, like I said in the beginning, the center bears the brunt. Where indices, parameters, and rulers for measuring the economic growth of a country are put in place, right, by international organs, nobody tells you that the Human Development Index is going to be measured in Nasarawa, this and that. No, it is at the center. That is what is used as a parameter for measurement. So, like he said, and like others have said, it is essential for the subnationals to play their part, not just sit in the offices like demigods as they're currently doing, and sit fat on people's resources.
I'll still come back to that because I want Prof to make a conclusion, but my producer says take a break. I'll take a break very shortly and return. Stay with us.